Hey everyone, it's Darren Gibson from Southpaws. You know the holiday season is just right around the corner, and if you have that certain person that likes their coffee and you don't know what to get them, I've got the solution for you. A Southpaws coffee cup. That's right. We've had our own coffee cups for a number of years now. They're made of thick ceramic, so it keeps your coffee or your hot chocolate hot. They're made 100% in the U.S. with union labor. Get them for $15 plus shipping by sending your name, address, and phone number to southpawsradio@gmail.com, and I'll get a hold of you. Make sure you hook up those special people in your life with merchandise from Southpaws and help support independent media and the First Amendment.
For the hardest-hitting show in talk radio, the true progressive voice since 2012. This is Southpaws.
And welcome to Southpaws on the Pacifica Radio Network. We are the leaders of the revolution. My name is Darren Gibson, and I'm your co-host.
And I'm Katy Steele for Jack Prince.
Well, we're going to have an interesting show today, if for no other reason than there's some construction going on where we're recording right now. So if you hear any noises in the background, it's not us. It's just the workers. So try to ignore the pounding and the heavy machinery that's going on around here.
Yeah, Murphy's Law of Life has them climbing up outside the window right as we start the show.
Climbing in, checking you out. You know.
They're literally hanging out outside the bathroom window right now. It's kind of weird.
Yeah. Oh, my gosh. Well, we've got quite a few topics to discuss today. Oh, boy. Trump's really going off the deep end.
Well, hey, no, let's not say that. This is normal.
Yeah, that's true. We're going to talk about the Justice Department investigating a possible bribery for pardon scheme. We have a little bit of coronavirus news for you, and we have our Hammer Time segment a little bit later on. Before we get started with today's show, a couple of reminders that you can follow us on social media. Go to facebook.com/Southpaws Radio Show. You can follow us on Twitter at Southpaws Radio. You can follow us on Tumblr, southpawsradioshow.tumblr.com. You can follow us on YouTube by doing a search for Southpaws Radio there. And you can become a patron of the show by going to patreon.com/Southpaws Radio. You can listen to the show anytime you like at Spreaker.com. Do a search for Southpaws there. You can also listen to Stitcher.com and do a search for Southpaws there as well. You can find us on Apple Podcasts by doing a search for Southpaws. Once you've found our logo, you found us. Links to our podcasts each week are sent to our Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, and our Tumblr accounts. You can listen to the show on Global Community Radio Channel 1 every Saturday night at 11. And you can listen to us on great Pacifica stations, including KCEI-FM in Taos, New Mexico, and KZGM in Kabul, Missouri. Before we get started with the show, I do want to give a quick shout-out. A dear friend of mine, Mary Zmadzinski, is celebrating her birthday as we're recording on Friday, December 4th,
Happy
2020.
birthday, Mary.
Yeah, Mary was supposed to be a permanent co-host on Women Libs Radio. Unfortunately, it never materialized before we got kicked off of that station and then went to Pacifica, and now we're not even producing Women Libs. But
well, if she ever wants, a woman to talk some stuff with, I'm here.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. She's more than welcome to come in anytime that she wants to. Oh, boy. So where should we start off with first? I guess we should probably get to this looming story here. This is NPR, National Public Radio. Ryan Lucas writes this on December 1st. The Justice Department is investigating a possible secret scheme involving a bribe in exchange for a presidential pardon. That is according to court documents unsealed Tuesday. The 18-page court opinion is heavily redacted, and the names of the individuals under investigation are blacked out, as is the identity of the person to be pardoned under the alleged plan. Still, the filings provide a glimpse into what investigators are probing. The federal court order signed by Chief Judge Beryl Howell in Washington, D.C. is dated August 28th. It stems from her review of a government request to access certain communications believed to document a secret lobbying scheme and a related bribery for pardon scheme. The filing says a government filter team was sorting through more than 50 digital devices, including iPhones and laptops, as part of an investigation when they came across emails pointing to the two alleged schemes. The secret lobbying scheme, the document says, allegedly involved two individuals whose names are redacted who lobbied senior White House officials to try to secure clemency for a third person whose name is blacked out. The related bribery conspiracy allegedly involved the offer of a substantial political contribution in exchange for a presidential pardon or reprieve of sentence for an individual whose identity is redacted. News of the investigation was first reported by CNN. A Justice Department official speaking on the condition of anonymity said, quote, "No government official was or is currently a subject or target of the investigation disclosed in this filing," end of quote. The fight over the communications revolved around whether the emails were covered by attorney-client privilege, which would shield them from the government. Chief Judge Howell ultimately found that the emails were not privileged materials because each of the emails in question was sent to an individual who is not a lawyer. Well, I guess now we know how to cover up.
Oh, my gosh.
Thanks for telling us. Go ahead.
I'm not putting it out of the question that these are his own children attempting to buy their clemency.
Or it could be that the unnamed third person is Rudy Giuliani.
Oh, for sure. But I'm just saying, his own children, he would charge for their freedom.
Yeah, exactly.
They're like, please, Dad.
Why not?
He's like, listen, there's a price.
Hey, they learned from the best, right?
Oh.
You know, this is something, I'm glad you mentioned that. This is something my mom wanted us to talk about this morning. She said that most parents want to teach their children to do the right thing. You always tell the truth. You don't steal. You don't lie.
Right.
You work hard.
A moral compass.
You have a moral compass. What the hell happened to the Trump family's moral compass? Did it ever exist in the first place?
Hundreds of years back, maybe. From as far as we've looked, no.
Because you take a look at Trump's relatives, they were supporting the Nazis, allegedly. You've got Trump's father, who was apparently quite the racist and tyrant as a New York landlord. Of course, that spawned off Donnie Jr.
I think it's ancestral memory, to be honest. I really do think that you pass along certain things to your descendants because I was recently researching my family history, and all I know is the town my grandpa was from, right? And I just found this article saying that some guy with his name in this small rural town was a deserter from World War II.
Oh, no.
Which would totally, like, I could see myself in this position back in the 40s going, no, I'm anti-violence, I'm anti-war, I'm not going to war. And I feel like I'm doing this virtuous thing, right? And then everybody comes back a hero.
Oh, my God.
And I'm the one that made the wrong, like, I could totally see that happening to me. So I think it's possible that if his great-grandparents were racist, even if he didn't know them, that he got a piece of that somewhere in his DNA.
Mm-hmm. Judge Howell wrote, quote, "The attorney-client privilege applies only when the participants in the communication are the client and the client's attorney, who is a member of the bar," end of quote. The decision means prosecutors can use the materials to confront the subjects of the investigation. In a tweet Tuesday evening, Donald Trump called the investigation, of course, fake news. Why wouldn't he?
Everything is fake news.
Yeah. The coronavirus is fake news. Russian interference is fake news.
Everything he didn't tweet himself is fake news. So there you go.
Yeah.
That's why when people say they've done their own research, that's what they mean. They've read Trump's tweets.
Yeah. As a matter of fact, this morning on the news, there was a article of ABC News reporting that Trump has apparently looking into preemptive pardons into at least 20 current administration members, current or past, both. Some of those may include his 3 children, his son-in-law Jared Kushner, and attorney Rudy Giuliani. So,
yeah, all of this was expected, though. We knew how he was going to spend the end of his term when he knew it was the end, we knew he was going to spend it buying favors, doing things that he's going to get paid back for later, regardless of what that means for the country, and that he's going to pardon everybody in his vicinity, and he's going to charge him to do it. And then he's going to be proud of it and come back and say, you should have done, anybody would have done the same thing, right? Because that's how he works. Later on, it's just going to be anybody that didn't do that was stupid. And it's a way to shift the moral compass, I think, of the whole nation.
There was some talk on Facebook. A friend of mine was talking to a friend of his who, I don't know if the guy is an attorney or if he is a retired attorney or what. But it came up in the discussion about pardons. The question was asked, once you're pardoned, can you use the Fifth Amendment to not incriminate yourself because you've already been pardoned for the crime? And the attorney says, funny you mentioned that, because the answer is no.
But if you've been pardoned, you also can't be retried again for the same
You can't be retried,
crime.
But you could be called as a witness if they're trying somebody else for that same crime.
But then, and you could, but then even if you incriminate yourself, you can't be charged.
You can't be tried because
Right.
you've already received a pardon. But they can't. But that's how information gets out there.
Right. At least we would know about it.
At least we would know about it. And if they tried to invoke the Fifth, that would be considered obstruction of justice. Therefore,
so they
that's
can't even
not
do it?
part of
Okay.
the pardon. Bye-bye, off to jail.
Right. Interesting.
Yeah. So there's that aspect of it. So that's kind of interesting. And apparently, I don't know when this is going to happen, but I saw on the news yesterday, on Thursday, that Ivanka Trump was apparently scheduled for a deposition. She had to speak 5 hours in a deposition.
Interesting.
Actually, I have this. This is Darren Roche writing for Newsweek. This is dated December the 4th. The Attorney General for the District of Columbia said an investigation into how money was spent for Donald Trump's 2017 inauguration is not politically motivated, and Ivanka Trump's comments to the contrary were highly misleading. Carl A. Racine, a Democrat, was responding to a claim made by Trump's daughter. She had posted on Twitter on Thursday about making a deposition to the Attorney General's office in relation to the probe. His office sued the Presidential Inaugural Committee in January, alleging the nonprofit misspent more than $1 million raised by grossly overpaying the Trump Hotel in Washington, D.C. So, yeah.
How can you even use your own hotel as a vendor and act like it's not a conflict?
Yeah, because they just do. Ivanka Trump said in a statement, quote, "This week I spent 5+ hours in a deposition with the Democrat D.C. AG's office where they questioned the rates charged at the Trump Hotel at the inauguration," end of quote. I'm
telling you. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
I get so angry. I'm constantly interrupting.
Oh, that's fine.
I'm just like, why? Why do we allow this? Because we let it happen not only on the federal level, we're doing it on the local level. We're just letting all of our commissioners, all of our representatives own the companies that are getting our money. Like, how is this should be the bottom line issue that we're attacking on every level, but it's like the last thing people discuss. It's always this fringe injustice, the person getting the contract. I'm like, no, it's actually the entire agenda for all of them.
Oh, absolutely. Continuing the story, she said she had shared a 2016 email with the Attorney General's office showing that she instructed the hotel to charge a fair market rate. Ivanka Trump added, quote, "This inquiry is another politically motivated demonstration of vindictiveness and waste of taxpayer dollars," end of quote. Racine, the D.C. Attorney General, spoke to Rachel Maddow Thursday about the case. He detailed some of the inaugural committee's spending at the Trump Hotel. Here's what he said, quote, "I think with all due respect to Ivanka Trump, what she put out today was highly misleading and at best only a part of the story," end of quote. He said that despite Trump's email about a market price, there was, quote, "clearly an attempt to pay a lot more," end of quote, just days later, pointing to warnings by the committee's event planner, Stephanie Winston Wolkoff. He told Maddow that the Trump Hotel charged the inaugural committee $175,000 for an event space, including a ballroom for half a day. Racine said another nonprofit, the President Inaugural Prayer Breakfast, paid just $5,000 for the same space on the same day.
It's just a slight markup.
Slight. Racine said, quote, "That doesn't sound like market rate to me," end of quote. The lawsuit says the former inaugural committee deputy chair Rick Gates personally managed contacts with the Trump Hotel, and he agreed to pay $175,000 per day so the committee could reserve the space for 4 days. Trump family members also agreed to this, the suit claims. Early on Twitter, Racine noted that the inaugural committee was bound by the same rules as other nonprofits. His office also sued the Trump Organization and the Trump Hotel as part of the same case. He wrote, quote, "We filed suit after gathering evidence that the Presidential Inaugural Committee knowingly entered into a grossly overpriced contract with the Trump Hotel, and he claimed the contrary is incorrect," end of quote. He shared an image of an email written by Wolkoff expressing concern about the planned payments to the Trump Hotel. Wolkoff also told the committee that the fees were at least twice the market rate, according to CNN.
Twice.
More than twice.
Yeah, twice would have been $10,000. You're talking about 200 times the market rate.
Yeah, pretty much. Good God. Racine said, quote, "D.C. law requires nonprofits to use funds for stated public purposes and to avoid unreasonable, wasteful expenses. Our investigation revealed the committee willfully used nonprofit funds to enrich the Trump family. It's very simple. They broke the law. That's why we sued." End of quote.
It's very simple. The nonprofit industrial complex is set up to do this from the bottom to the top. For us to be upset with Donald Trump, we should all probably stop and think about all the millions of nonprofits out there that are doing the same thing. And I am mad at Donald Trump, don't get me wrong, but that's why it's not fair to just talk about what he's doing, because he never would have gotten away with this. This never would have been even still happening. He would have been publicly hung, or I can't even imagine what they would have done 100 years ago.
Oh,
somebody
God.
getting away with what he's getting away with. So I'm shocked right now that we've all let this go this far.
Yeah, and I can tell you part of why it happens. People don't really think about their government anymore. They complain about it, but most of the common people,
they're too busy working.
We're too busy working.
Yes.
And you know why? Because the rich want it that way.
That's right.
They don't want us involved.
The honest people with a moral compass and a work ethic, they're too busy doing what's right. The people that don't have that kind of moral compass are the ones that will take the favors to push themselves ahead of everybody else, and that's why they end up in those positions to be a public official. And that's why this just keeps... that's why it's a complex. It's not just a system. It's an entire complex.
Will you please do me a favor? Will you pull up what you read to me earlier about the child asking what the difference is between a Democrat and a Republican? Because that was spot on.
It's the perfect description of it. And I've been
really is.
Yeah, I've been this kid in this position, so I totally felt this in my soul. Okay, so it says, my son asked me, "Mommy, what's the difference between a Democrat and a Republican?" I was like, all right, a Democrat is like this really nice aunt who promises to take you to Disney World, but then something else always comes up and she never comes through. And a Republican is like this really grumpy uncle, and he tells you there's no money for Disney World, but then you find out he went without you.
Uh-huh. That's right on the money, though.
Yeah. It's like, I don't know how either one of them could be that way, but that's what we've come to accept. And we're all like, well, at least that aunt is nice to us, so she's our favorite. Mm-hmm. And everybody... can judge us for having a favorite aunt or not, but when you look at the uncle, everybody's like, okay, that makes more sense now.
Yes, it does. Oh, boy. Well, we might as well just go right into our next segment here, but in order to do that, we have to play the appropriate music.
Stop! Hammer time!
Oh, yeah, it's hammer time. It's time to drop the hammer on the douchebag of the week, and we have a previous winner of the award. He won it last year for comments that he made. This week's winner, Trump lawyer Joe diGenova. Oh, boy. I have this. This is Alex Payne writing for Business Insider. This is dated December the 1st. An attorney working on the Trump campaign has said that the former U.S. cybersecurity chief Christopher Krebs, who was fired by Trump for denying the existence of widespread voter fraud in the election, should be drawn and quartered and taken out at dawn and shot. Trump fired Krebs from his role as director of the Cybersecurity and Infrastructure Security Agency last month after the agency said that the November 3rd election was, quote, the most secure in American history, end of quote, and rejected Trump's baseless voter fraud claims, which he still is making to this very day. Krebs at the time said, quote, "There is no evidence that any voting system deleted or lost votes, changed votes, or was in any way compromised," end of quote. Krebs doubled down in an interview on Sunday, saying the high numbers of paper ballots used at the election, quote, "gives you the ability to prove that there was no malicious algorithm or hacked software that adjusted the tally of the vote," end of quote. He told CBS News, quote, 95% of the ballots cast in the 2020 election had a paper record associated with it, compared to 2016 about 82%, end of quote. diGenova, who CNN reported as helping Rudy Giuliani with Trump's legal challenge, told the Howie Carr show on Newsmax, quote, "Anybody who thinks the election went well, like that idiot Krebs who used to be the head of cybersecurity, that guy is a Class A moron. He should be drawn and quartered, taken out at dawn, and shot," end of quote.
Okay, so nice to know how the intelligence community feels like they should deal with people for being stupid, for being a moron. That's what he says we should do to the guy. Like,
yeah,
and that's an actual law enforcement official. Well, previously he was.
Yes,
right?
he was a U.S. attorney at one point.
Huge. So, I'm just so frustrated. I once said that one of our local public officials should be publicly flogged.
And you caught hell for that one.
I wasn't threatening it. I didn't say I was going to do it or that anybody else should do it. I was just saying that morally maybe that could be a public response.
It could very well be.
I did catch hell for that. But I'm like, I'm trying really hard not to come up with violent solutions now. And to hear that, from a director of law enforcement or from a U.S. attorney is just like, wow.
Oh, God.
Where is the low? Is there one? Or they just
no, there is
It's just
none.
a big competition to see who can go lower.
Oh, it is. It pretty much, and it started with Rush Limbaugh back in the 80s. Feminazi, libtard, and it's just gotten worse from there.
Oh, it's so bad. It's so bad. And you can't talk to these people.
Michael Savage, Howie Carr. I mean, Mike Gallagher. Oh, God, Mike Gallagher is god-awful to listen to, and why Salem pays them the money they do, I don't know. Matter of fact, we'll get into some FCC news after we finish this segment here. Media Matters for America, a left-leaning media watchdog, published footage of the remarks. Insider has asked the Trump campaign for comment. It is not the first time since last month's election that a figure on the Trump campaign has used violent language to target perceived opponents. Rudy Giuliani, in a recent interview with Fox Propaganda Channel, said that someone should cut the head off the Democratic Party while making a throat-slashing gesture.
Ha! Too late.
Yeah.
The Democratic Party cut their own head off years ago.
They most certainly did. So,
joke's on you, buddy.
Yeah, so Joe diGenova, winner of Douchebag of the Week, for wanting to threaten former public officials because you don't agree with what they had to say.
Because they're morons.
Because they're morons and should be drawn and quartered. We have this message for you, Joe.
Don't be a douchebag.
Yeah, that's right. Joe, this is the second time you've won this award in 2 years. You need to stop being a douchebag. Oh, good God.
It seems like, most of our douchebags end up getting a second award.
Yeah.
It must mean we choose well.
Yeah. By the way, folks, the end of the year is coming up, which means Douchebag of the Year awards will be announced soon on our official Facebook page, and we'll have it on the January 15th episode of Southpaws.
Now, is this a vote from all of the douchebags that we've had this
Yes,
year? Okay.
I am compiling all of the winners of Hammer Time,
Excellent,
and they all
excellent.
get posted on the Facebook page. We do a top 3, pick your top 3, and we do runoff voting.
Excellent. I'm really looking forward to this. I like it.
So, yeah, just make sure
Paper ballots? Or
no, not on Facebook, unfortunately. But since we're talking about the Howie Carr show, because I don't think Howie's syndicated on terrestrial radio anymore, but he used to be on the air. It says Newsmax, but I think he's just doing a podcast right now.
I see.
Speaking of which, I got to mention this, talking about somebody in radio hanging up the microphone. Longtime financial advisor Clark Howard, who has had a syndicated show on the radio for decades, announced that he's retiring at the end of the year. So he's been on for 35 years.
Oh, wow.
So he's been doing it a long time. Oh, okay, how he is. Apparently Newsmax is a syndicator. He is on the air in Boston.
Oh, okay.
And he is syndicated and live in 5 states. Good God.
Yeah.
So we might as well get into this story. This is from Brett Wilkins, writing for commondreams.org. Digital rights groups applauded the news Monday that FCC Chairman Ajit Pai, known for his efforts to destroy net neutrality and his fealty to corporate telecom interests, will resign his powerful post as the head of the FCC chair when Donald Trump leaves office in January.
Yay!
I've got this to say. Good riddance.
Peace out.
Evan Greer, who is the deputy director of Fight for the Future, said, quote, Ajit Pai will go down in history as one of the most corrupt government officials of the century. His callous attack on net neutrality and blatant coddling of big telecom monopolies sparked the largest cross-partisan online backlash in the modern era. As he fades into the background, his smug demeanor and giant Reese's mug will become cautionary memes, reminding internet users what happens when we don't hold our government accountable, end of quote.
Oh, that is so true. He is going to go down as a very infamous historical figure.
Pai is considered the most controversial chairperson in the 86-year history of the FCC. By the way, in talking about the history of the FCC was started by FDR.
Oh,
1934.
Okay.
Yep. Pai is best known for leading the successful push to overturn net neutrality rules in 2017, a move that former FCC Commissioner Mignon Clyburn at the time likened to, quote, handing the keys to the internet to a handful of multi-billion-dollar corporations, end of quote. She wasn't wrong there.
But they handed the keys to every agency to multi-billion-dollar corporations. That was exactly what Donald Trump did.
Mm-hmm. In 2018, Pai was also investigated by his own agency for alleged corruption in connection with his deregulatory blitz. While the Pai-led effort to kill net neutrality may soon be overturned after Democrats regain a 3-2 majority on the commission, his shepherding of the T-Mobile Sprint mega merger, for which he was accused of betraying the public interest in service of major corporations, will be much more difficult to reverse. But it can be done. I guarantee you, if Bernie Sanders was president,
exactly why everything is happening the way it is.
T-Mobile would be sliced and diced.
Yep.
Just like Carter did to the baby bells.
Yep.
Everybody wants to get on Carter's ass. Oh, well, he was a piece of crap as a president. Yeah, he also broke up AT&T, so there.
Yep, they've pushed Bernie out completely. I'm so annoyed. I'm not even annoyed. I'm irate about these cabinet picks Joe Biden has. And that's the thing, as bad as Trump's picks are, and that's the biggest issue with the last 4 years with him, because his actions and his choices were so horrible that Biden can't possibly disappoint anybody. Mm-hmm. There is no way he can F this up because Donald Trump was just so bad. It's so frustrating to me.
It will now be up to President-elect Joe Biden to decide whether to promote one of the 2 Democrats serving on the committee, either Jessica Rosenworcel or Jeffrey Starks, to become chair or to find someone new to fill the top spot. Hey, Joe, I have a suggestion. Please, put me in charge of the Federal Communications Commission. I guarantee you the first thing I would do would be to reinstitute the 6612 rule. For those of you that don't know what that rule is, back in the 1970s, the FCC pushed a rule that said that you cannot own more than 6 television stations, more than 6 FM radio stations, and more than 12 AM radio stations in the entire country. You had limits. You couldn't own a television station and a radio station in the same market, period.
And yeah, this is the underlying foundation of fixing any of the complexes. You can't fix any of them. Not the nonprofit, not the military, not any of them if you don't have the media, if you don't have public communication.
These are rules that were put in place so that more voices could be heard in the public airwaves. And what have we done since the Telecommunications Act of 94? Thank you, Bill Clinton.
Consolidated and monopolized the communications industry.
Because Bill Clinton was a conservative, period.
I mean, look at the fact that the name of the company that bought Blackwater, I think about this all the time, Frontier Communications Group, right? Or Frontier Global Communications?
Yeah, I
something
don't
like that.
remember.
One of them, but it was literally a communications company. Like, that is... How do people not see how important it is to not have that privatized? Oh.
Yeah, well, it was
You're right, we should have pointed... I'm going to say
with.
Darren for FCC.
Yeah, please put me in the as FCC chair.
Honestly, like what are we looking at here? The Neera Tanden choice?
Oh, God.
For the Office of Budget Management. I can't.
Yeah, we'll get into Neera Tanden here. Another previous winner of Douchebag of the Week. Oh, boy. In 2014, I'm reading this here off of Wikipedia. In 2014, Academy became a division of Constellus Group along with Triple Canopy and other security companies that were part of the Constellus Group as the result of an acquisition. So, yeah, they've been through multiple owners at this point, multiple name changes. It's still the same.
Yeah. Well, I found it really interesting because Frontier was one of the names of it before he sold it. Let me look it up really quick.
Yeah.
But I know that here in West Michigan we have Frontier Communications, which is a cable company.
They also do landline telephones. I'm one of their customers, unfortunately.
Oh, okay.
Because they don't allow any competition in their markets.
Well, and they're the ones installing all of the infrastructure too, right? If the Frontier has their own, I'm guessing.
They're not installing fiber optic cable in my area after they promised to when they bought Verizon's landline service. They said, in 5 years, everybody will have a fiber optic cable. Well, I still don't. So you know what I say to them saying, we're going to have fiber optic everywhere? Yeah, it's bullshit. It's what it is. They lied. And that'd be the first thing. Put me in as the FCC chair because that'll be the first thing I do is they're either start installing it now everywhere or they're getting broke up. Bye-bye.
Okay, I did find what I was talking. It was Frontier Services Group was the name of the Blackwater founder's new company.
Yeah.
After he sold Blackwater to China. So he started Frontier Services Group. And then shortly after that is when we got Frontier Communications. That was when I started seeing the truck driving school, all these other things with that name.
Everybody's using names because Frontier's separate from them. I guarantee it.
But I mean that's the thing too.
But
how hard is it to make an LLC?
But now everybody uses Spectrum around here. Spectrum Charter uses Spectrum as their brand of cable. But we have Spectrum Health.
There are connections though between Spectrum Charter Cable and Spectrum Health.
Yeah.
So I think that's on purpose.
Yeah, Frontier used to be known as Citizens Utility Company.
That's a really good analogy for life right now.
Yeah. They basically bought.
Now it's privatized.
they bought up Verizon. They bought up portions of AT&T. So yeah, they're now the big deal. And by the way, they're getting into the cable business as well through their telephone lines. And and that's one of the other things. If you get Frontier landline phone service, you get solicitations all the time for Dish Network. So they've got some sort of a deal cooked between them. Let me continue this story here. Digital rights advocates hailed news of Pai's impending departure. According to Greer, quote, Pai's departure cannot come soon enough. We are in the middle of a crushing pandemic. Hundreds of millions of people are working from home and sending their kids to school online. Comcast just announced plans to reimpose arbitrary data caps. Kids are sitting outside Taco Bell to do their homework. We desperately need a functional FCC that will quickly repair the damage done by Ajit Pai and get to work protecting the public from ISP abuses. As I mentioned, I cannot get internet at my house because they do not have fiber optic cable laid in the ground by my house. In order for me to upload this show to Pacifica Radio, I have to go and sit outside of a library.
Wow. Yeah, that's really interesting, too, because it's not like they don't have the ability. They literally do not want people in rural areas to have internet access.
Exactly. And they keep saying, well, we don't have the demand for it. Well, yes, you do. You know, they can say all they want to.
They know they have the demand for it. They do. And look at Abdul El-Sayed, when he was running for governor, had a plan called MiFi.
Really?
Which was Michigan Wi-Fi for all. Yeah, he was going to get internet for the entire state because of people in your areas that have to deal with stuff like that. It's completely on purpose. It's strategic to push the poor people out of everything, basically.
You know, and everybody, the companies say, oh, well, they don't say it verbatim, but they basically are saying, well, these old farmers out in the rural area don't want internet.
Well, let's be honest. No, the old farmers out in those areas have their own cell towers. They have enough money to provide themselves internet to their farm. That's what it comes down to, is the people that need it can get it on their own.
You know how we get internet in our area? There's one of two methods at this point. You either have to go through a satellite company, HughesNet, Dish Network, DirecTV, or there's a company in Grant called CISA. They're all over the area. They basically send internet over a radio wave and they bounce it off silos. I'm not kidding.
Oh, no. Do you want to hear a funny story? It's not really a funny story. It's a local fact about Betsy and Dick DeVos's son-in-law, married to Alyssa DeVos, their firstborn daughter. Mm-hmm. He actually has a mobile grid company. That's what they do. They set up mobile grids. So, I mean, I would imagine that if you know the right people and have money, that you just get your own grid. And that's electricity, internet, everything, right?
Isn't that how it always works?
I mean,
it's always the ones that have the most that need it the least, and the ones that have it the least need it the most.
Exactly. And they're keeping it from those people on purpose in order to increase their power. It's all about power.
Mm-hmm. Matt Wood, Vice President for Policy and Senior Counsel at Free Press, said in a statement that, quote, the entire premise of Pai's failed chairmanship is a lie. He claims that his radical deregulatory agenda spurred broadband improvements and closed the digital divide. None of these claims are remotely true. While Pai hangs out the mission accomplished banner, the stark reality is that nearly 80 million people in America still lack adequate broadband at home, with Black, brown, and indigenous people disproportionately disconnected.
See? Poor people. That's what they want, is just to eradicate the poor people.
That gaping digital divide remains, and Pai's done nothing to close it, even during the ongoing pandemic that's made essential internet connections that much more vital. There's little positive to say about 4 years of wasted opportunities and bluster from this failed chairman. But saying good riddance today is an opportunity to turn the page and get back to the serious work the FCC ignored while Pai ran it. End of quote.
I mean, here's one example. COVID hits. Everything closes down. They tell you, go get unemployment. Everybody's eligible. But you couldn't pay your internet bill because you didn't have any money. So you can't go online to file for unemployment. You can't go to the library because the libraries are closed. What do you do? What do you do if you don't have a cell phone and you don't have Wi-Fi? Nothing. You can't do anything. If you have friends that have resources, those people will get help, right?
Yeah.
But if you don't even have that, if your friends are poor too, you die and everybody judges you as if you had another choice. It's...
Yeah, I know. It's ludicrous. Since we just finished a common dream story, let's get into another common dream story. We've been mentioning Neera Tanden for the last several minutes off and on here. This is Jake Johnson writing for Common Dreams. Reports late Sunday that President-elect Joe Biden has decided to nominate Neera Tanden, head of the corporate-backed think tank Center for American Progress, to lead his budget office, drew an icy reception from progressives who pointed to the Democratic operatives' history of attacking policies such as Medicare for All and voicing support for Social Security cuts.
Yes, make no mistake. That is her passion in life, is dismantling Medicare for All opportunities and allowing people to F with our Social Security. So,
if confirmed as the director of Office of Management and Budget, Tanden would be charged with crafting the Biden administration's spending agenda, a task that has taken on even greater significance amid the coronavirus pandemic and an unprecedented economic calamity that calls for sweeping stimulus measures. As Common Dreams reported last week, a coalition of progressive lawmakers and advocacy groups is warning Biden against selecting any deficit hawks to serve in his cabinet. specifically training their focus on austerity proponent Bruce Reed, an architect of Bill Clinton's destructive welfare reform plan and head of an Obama-era commission that recommended deep cuts to Social Security. While news that Reed is out of the running for OMB chief was welcomed by progressives, the selection of Tanden, who worked under Reed in the Clinton White House, also sparked concerns given her past comments on healthcare policy and Social Security.
And that is not me banging my head on the wall over Neera Tanden, although I really want to right now. And the hammering is actually making me feel better about it. So continue, please.
Yeah. Brianna Joy Gray, former National Press Secretary for Senator Bernie Sanders' 2020 presidential campaign, tweeted, quote, "Everything toxic about the corporate Democratic Party is embodied in Neera Tanden," end of quote. And that's a good summary.
That summed it up completely. There's nothing better you can say about her.
A Clinton loyalist with a penchant for demonizing progressives, Tanden was an architect of the Affordable Care Act and has since endorsed health care proposals like Medicare for America, a plan single-payer proponents have rejected as a false solution that would leave intact the most predatory elements of the for-profit system.
Put simply, Neera Tanden is a protector and defender of the private healthcare industry.
She is.
That's it. She is a bodyguard for private healthcare industry, and that's what Joe Biden is giving us. And because he's coming after Donald Trump, that looks like a victory. And that's sick. We are literally rewarding the blackmailers that are blackmailing us for our lives, parents' lives or kids' lives, and half of us are convinced we're winning. It's really sick.
It is. As a representative of Hillary Clinton's 2016 campaign, Tanden clashed with National Nurses United over Medicare for All during that year's Democratic platform fight.
Who clashes with National Nurses United? How do you argue with the National Nurses Union?
Corporatists do.
Yeah,
oligarchs
protectors and defenders of the private healthcare system.
Tanden also has a history of expressing support for Social Security and Medicare cuts, as the Daily Poster's Walker Bragman documented.
The poorer these old people are, the more health care they need, guys. It ain't rocket science what's happening here.
Mm-hmm. In a 2012 C-SPAN appearance, Tanden said, quote, "We should have savings on entitlements, and the Center for American Progress has put forward ideas on proposals to reform the beneficiary structure of Social Security. Some of our progressive allies aren't as excited about that as we are, but we've put those ideas on the table. We think that those are legitimate ideas that need to be part of a proposal where everyone's at the table. We don't just ask middle-class Americans to sacrifice, we ask all Americans," end of quote.
Especially the poor ones.
Let me just give you my opinion on that. We ask all Americans to sacrifice. No, you don't.
You don't have any progressive allies either. I want a name. Name one progressive ally, because if they're progressive, they are not your ally. I hate to be the one to break it to you.
I almost stopped at the first part of the sentence. We should have savings on entitlements. God damn it, they are not entitlements. That's my tax money paying for this shit.
Yeah,
it's mine. It's yours. You need to be pissed about this, people.
I don't know. I don't get it. I don't get why. I don't get why people don't care. They're mad if you take 10 extra cents from them and they didn't agree to it for the millage, right? But when you actually show them that somebody's stealing their entire life's work, they're just like, oh, but are they Republicans or Democrats?
Here's what I'd like to know. Here's the next paragraph here. Though she's frequently described in the media as a progressive, who's describing her as a progressive?
Thank you. I want to know who her progressive allies are that are so unhappy with her decisions. Clearly, if they don't agree with you on the issues, dummy, they're probably not allies, and you're probably not progressive.
Yes. Leaked internal emails reveal Tanden's own political instincts to depart from what is typically considered progressive. That is according to Nathan Robinson of Current Affairs.
Oh, let's talk about leaked emails. Why don't you go look up Neera Tanden on WikiLeaks? There are some real gems in there, friends. Some real gems.
Here's what Robinson wrote. Quote, "She advised the Clinton campaign against a $15 minimum wage and in one disturbing instance, as Glenn Greenwald has reported, argued that Libyans should be forced to turn over large portions of their oil revenues to repay the U.S. for the costs incurred in bombing Libya on the grounds that Americans will support future wars only if they see that the countries attacked by the U.S. pay for the invasions, end of quote.
I have no words for that.
Oh, my God. News that Biden intends to nominate Tanden for OMB came as the president-elect began to assemble a team of economic advisors which will inherit a crisis that has pushed millions into permanent unemployment, shuttered businesses across the nation, and left countless Americans unable to afford basic necessities.
What just happened here by appointing her Office of Budget Management is he cut Bernie Sanders off at the knees as the head of the Senate Budget Committee. Mm-hmm. So his life's work, which the most power he's gotten out of it, and to tell you, one of the biggest accomplishments in Bernie's life is getting goddamn Joe Biden elected. Mm-hmm. He did it by himself with both of his hands and his legs tied behind his back. Okay? While everybody criticized him, sacrificed his own chance at the presidency in order to do what was best because he could see a picture bigger than any one of us. And how does Joe Biden repay him? The second he's not even in office yet, he cuts him off at the knees. Mm-hmm. This is the world we're in. This is what we're dealing with. So you're not winning. None of us are winning.
No. We think we're winning. Well, we're not. We don't even think we're winning. You and I both know.
We know we're losing.
We know that we're losing big time. The Wall Street Journal reported, quote, the former vice president has picked Cecilia Rouse, a Princeton University labor economist, to be chairwoman of the Council of Economic Advisors. He has also selected Adewale Wally Adeyemo, a former senior international economic advisor during the Obama administration, to serve as Janet Yellen's top deputy at the Treasury Department. And he will turn to two campaign economic advisors, Jared Bernstein and Heather Bushy, to serve as members of the CEA alongside Ms. Rouse. End of quote. That's published by the Wall Street Journal.
I'm so optimistic and idealist that I cannot give up this vision of this stuff being so bad and so infuriating that eventually America has to rise up. They have to. They have to rise up together, and they're not going to come for one category of people. These people have made it so obvious how they're dividing us that when we finally get fed up and we stand up as Americans, every one of them are so done, and they might feel like they're safe because they're not in that category, and they think we're going to come for one. Like, no.
As former congressional candidate Dean Vanderstelt asks, fed up yet?
Yeah. I mean,
yeah,
that day is coming.
Justin Wolfers, a professor at the University of Michigan, praised Biden's emerging team of economic advisors, which the former vice president is expected to formally announce this week as damn solid. Wolfers added, quote, this is a group that is individually and collectively committed to both full employment and boosting wages. End of quote. Does he really believe this? Does he really believe his own words that are coming out of his own mouth?
Keep in mind that things like wages and employment don't mean the same thing to you as they do to him. Mm-hmm. That's what it comes down to.
Former Labor Secretary Robert Reich offered a similar assessment, tweeting this, quote, excellent, all committed to full employment, boosting wages, reducing inequality, end of quote. No, I'll
really,
believe
Mr.
it when
Reich?
I see it.
That's excellent. We're all committed to full employment. I am not committed to full employment, Darren. I'm just going to say it. I'm not. Yeah. I'm not committed to full employment. Give me half employment. Give me half employment and a full paycheck.
Exactly.
I'm committed to that.
Mm-hmm. That's where we need to be.
I'm not going to beg you for jobs, and I'm sure as hell not going to thank you. If you want me to thank you, give me less of a job and more money. Like, what in the hell is wrong with all of us? We're out here talking about we want more jobs. No, we don't. I don't know anybody that wants another job.
No. It used to be in this country that one person could make damn good wages, put a roof over their family's head, feed their family, put clothes on them.
They weren't even damn
pay
good.
The utilities.
They were sustainable wages.
Yeah.
My parents, your parents.
Yeah. You know, if it wasn't for the fact that my dad was in the Carpenters Union, we wouldn't have anything.
And my dad wasn't in a union. He worked in a steel plant, and he got pancreatic cancer at 32 and died from it.
Yes.
And so that's why we don't have anything. So it's real clear where this is all heading, you know?
And yet we have people that actively complain about unions. Oh, why should I have to pay money to be in a union? Well, we've done stories on this in the past that the amount that you pay, the minimal amount that you pay in union dues comes back to you fourfold.
Oh,
this is
let's keep in mind,
statistics.
though.
This is data.
But if you look at real data that is not completely manipulated by the people doing this, our labor unions have been hijacked by the Democratic Party.
Unfortunately, they
That
have.
is an honest-to-God truth, and people in my generation have not seen the benefits of unions. They've seen money come out of their paycheck, but have they actually gotten the benefits? No, I don't think they really have, and that's why it's so hard to push people to be pro-union. Because, I mean, especially once right to work hit, then it was really easy to make the labor unions look bad, but they were already bad.
Although I will give very little bit of credit to the Teamsters for going out and organizing after right to work hit in Michigan.
Which...
And they did get several companies on board.
It's the workers, and that's my point. Is not when I say the labor unions have screwed us, I don't mean the workers. I don't mean the labor union, the union members. It's the union leadership, the people that literally throw all of their people, all of their local post members under the bus and take their own favor. So that's where the issue is. But if you want to be inspired, go to a union meeting, man. That's where you actually see passionate people that know what it is to sacrifice and work.
Absolutely. I want to get to this story. This was just published on December the 3rd. This is by Denisha Aldridge at Channel 11 in Atlanta, Georgia. This was published at WZZM TV's website. Researchers from Georgia State University announced Thursday news of an antiviral drug that could be game-changing until a vaccine for COVID-19 is available. In a news release, Georgia State University said molnupiravir has appeared to suppress the transmission of the coronavirus within just 24 hours. Dr. Richard Plemper, the professor at Georgia State who led the group, said, quote, "This is the first demonstration of an orally available drug to rapidly block SARS-CoV-2 transmission." End of quote. And then he said that the drug could be game-changing. The scientific name of the drug is MK44H2EIDD2801. So... That's a mouthful.
I guess. That sounds really promising, though, and very similar to the strategy they're using with the HIV virus.
Yeah, molnupiravir is also a mouthful, but that's the trade name for it.
I don't even attempt prescription names.
Yeah. Researchers said that since this is an oral drug, treatment can be started early for a potentially threefold benefit: inhibiting patients' progress to severe disease, shortening the infectious phase, rapidly silence local outbreaks. In the study, a team said it used a repurposed version of the drug against SARS-CoV-2 and used a ferret model to test the effect of the drug on halting virus spread. Dr. Robert Cox, a postdoctoral fellow in the Plemper Group and a co-lead author of the study, said, quote, "We believe ferrets are a relevant transmission model because they readily spread SARS-CoV-2 but mostly do not develop severe disease, which closely resembles SARS-CoV-2 spread in young adults." End of quote. If the data translates to humans, researchers said COVID-19 patients treated with the drug could become non-infectious within 24 hours after the beginning of treatment. So while they've tested this on ferrets, of all things, we're still waiting on human trials, and we'll see how long that takes.
Right, but I mean, with how fast the vaccine research has gone, I wouldn't expect it to take incredibly long. So it does seem like we are looking at an end to the pandemic in the next year. And it's been so hard to even think about what was coming. Just to be able to say that out loud and feel like confident in it is pretty relieving.
I hope so. Unfortunately, it's not coming fast enough for many people who are currently fighting this damn disease. Or stuck on ventilators and such. Not
surviving. Like, too many stories I've heard of people lost.
Yeah, and I want to end today's show by reading this obituary. This is published at Price & Sons Funeral Home in Kansas. This has made the national news because this obituary just excoriates people who don't wear masks. And I'm going to read it here in its entirety. Dr. Marvin James Farr, 81, of Scott City, Kansas, passed away December 1st, 2020 in isolation at Park Lane Nursing Home. He was preceded in death by more than 260,000 Americans infected with COVID-19. He died in a room not his own, being cared for by people dressed in confusing and frightening ways. He died with COVID-19, and his final days were harder, scarier, and lonelier than necessary. He was not surrounded by friends and family. Marvin was born May 23, 1939, to Jim and Dorothy Farr of Modoc, Kansas. He was born into an America recovering from the Great Depression and about to face World War II, times of loss and sacrifice difficult for most of us to imagine. Americans would be asked to ration essential supplies and send their children around the world to fight and die in wars of unfathomable destruction. He died in a world where many of his fellow Americans refused to wear a piece of cloth on their face to protect one another. Marvin was a farmer and a veterinarian. He graduated from Kansas State University in 1968. His careers filled his life with an understanding of the science of life, how to nurture it, how to sustain it, and the myriad of ways that life can go wrong. As a young man, he debated between studying mortuary or veterinary science. He chose life over death. The science that guided his professional life has been disparaged and abandoned by so many of the same people who depended on his knowledge to care for their animals and to raise their food. Marvin was a religious man. He was a lay reader at St. Luke's Episcopal Church. He saw no conflict between the science of his professional life and the belief of his personal life. Each enriched the other. From religion, he especially drew on lessons of forgiveness and care. Perhaps the most important comes from the Lord's Prayer. And forgive us our trespasses, as we forgive those who trespass against us. He would look after those who had harmed him the deepest, a sentiment echoed by the healthcare workers struggling to do their jobs as their own communities turn against them or make their jobs harder. He would also fail those who needed him the most at times, as he was still human with his flaws and limits. Marvin was a man of the community. His membership in the Anthem Masonic Lodge 284 and the Scott County Shrine Club mattered to him for both the camaraderie of his brothers and for the good works that they facilitated, the most visible of which is the Shriners Hospitals for Children's Network. Even in a social organization, he chose one that centered the health and medical care of others. Marvin was a family man, both of blood and chosen family. He was preceded in death by his wife Lottie Farr, son Justin Farr, brothers Everett Farr and Howard Farr, and parents. He is survived by his children Courtney Farr and Tamara Wilkins of Eudora, Kansas, Tessa Fansler of Sanford, Florida, and Scott and Tracy Burling of Scott, Louisiana, and numerous grandchildren, great-grandchildren, other family, and loved ones. Memorial donations may be made to the Scott County Hospital Foundation in care of Price & Sons Funeral Home. A memorial will be held at a later date due to COVID-19. So, yeah, that's something else.
Yeah. Rest in peace.
Yeah. I guess the question is, what's it going to take, folks? What's it going to take for some of your conservative friends, your violent conservative friends, because that's what they are. They're all conservatives are violent, my opinion. What's it going to take for them to finally put a mask on, to finally think about others before themselves? Is it going to take somebody in their family getting sick? Is it going to take somebody in their family getting put on a ventilator? Is it going to take somebody in their family dying? What's it going to take?
Good questions.
I don't know. Well, that's going to wrap things up for this week, and we'll be back next week. In the meantime, I'm Darren Gibson.
And I'm Katy Steele Baroni for Jack Prince.
And for our announcer, Kristen Cook, please support independent media and the First Amendment.
The stations that carry Southpaws do not necessarily share the opinions expressed on the show. Southpaws is protected by the First Amendment to the U.S. Constitution and is copyrighted by Big D Entertainment. All rights reserved.